How is it going, everybody? My name is DeMarco, and I don't know about all of you, but I am wildly excited for this week of upcoming games showcases. Gamers Christmas is really here, and it's largely in part due to the fact that there's been so few leaks this time around. Watching these shows is not going to feel like a checkbox of that was there, and that was there. We actually get to sit back and speculate and be excited and anticipate, such as the topic of today's discussion as to whether or not The Elder Scrolls 6 will be making an appearance at the Xbox Games Showcase. And I see a lot of people very split on this issue, and I'm excited that we actually get to speculate a little bit about it, whether it will be there or it won't. This is fun, and I enjoy this part of the process. So if you are new here and you enjoy Elder Scrolls, Bethesda, or Xbox, please do consider sticking around on the channel. Would love to have you. I'll be streaming the upcoming game showcases, so I would love to get to meet some new faces there as well, and I'd be very honored if you wanted to stop by. And I also do have videos where I go over my expectations for the Xbox Game Showcase and Summer Games Fest as well, that focus on the games I'm most interested in. So check that out if you're interested. But self-promotion aside, let's really dive into this, right? Because lots of folks taking very different opinions, and I don't think there's necessarily a bad argument one way or the other. And I'm not trying to convince anybody watching this video that it'll be there or that it won't. I certainly have my bias, and that will come through in this video. I'll just say straight up. But there's good arguments to be made on either side. For example, Mr. Matty Plays, just today, as of recording this video, released his Xbox predictions list, where he said he thinks Elder Scrolls 6 has a solid chance of ending the showcase. There are others, such as Juicehead, who do think it will be shown at this year's showcase as well. And then folks like Luke Stevens, and I was actually featured in one of his recent live streams, which was pretty cool, but folks like Luke Stevens, as well as myself, who think it's not really a chance. If it's going to release in 2026, there's plenty of time, and especially if this game is to launch in 2027, it doesn't make sense to show it off this early. So we're going to be diving into all the arguments that I've commonly seen, and I really want to know what you guys are feeling about all this down in the comment section away. So fire away down there. But let's get started into some of the first arguments that I most commonly see. I think we got to be honest here. Xbox, you need to slow down. You have too many. You've gotten really deep into this habit of announcing games way before they're ready, and that results in these really long gaps between when the games get revealed and when they get released, and gaps of information of when we get to see them and when they just go into obscure silence. You could see that with Contraband, you could see that with Everwild, you could argue Fable kind of falls into that as well, or a game like Halo Infinite, which was announced in 2018 and then had unexpected delays and then was released in 2021. There's a lot of uncertainty. Delays happen, but revealing them this early should be the exception, not the norm. And I genuinely believe that the strongest strategy is when games are announced and when they're released within 1 year of that. That was a strategy that Xbox tried to do in their 2023 showcase. They said every single game that we've shown off is going to be playable within 1 year. Now, naturally that didn't happen. So
obviously we know that 2022 was a light year for Xbox as far as releasing titles. Now, last year during the showcase, you had the 12-month plan. You didn't necessarily deliver on all the games coming.
No, we didn't deliver. Not necessarily.
Like,
we didn't deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I don't know if Xbox just said, F it, we can't meet these deadlines anyway. Fans are excited. Let's just show them everything we got. I think Game Pass is a big instigator of this, and we'll talk a little bit about how Game Pass does factor into everything in a little bit. But I will say it makes sense why a lot of folks are expecting that Microsoft and Xbox are going to do the same thing when it comes to the Elder Scrolls 6. Especially, I think Xbox is getting a little bit cocky when you see the success that their titles are having on other platforms. So they want to make sure that fans keep saying, hey, here's another game to look forward to. Here's another one coming from Xbox, and another, and another. And it doesn't necessarily matter when these games are going to come out, if they're going to get delayed. Just matters that these are the IPs and these are the massive titles that we're working on. So for Xbox to put the pressure on to Bethesda and say, hey, give us a little something. Oblivion Remastered just launched. We want to capitalize on that hype. Give us something for Elder Scrolls 6. They've been working on it since as early as 2018, so you gotta have something to show now. And that's further exemplified when you realize that pressure might not just be coming from Bethesda, from Xbox, but it's also coming from the fan side as well. As Matty pointed out in his own video, how the time between the initial teaser to now is sort of out of control.
Is the headlines. The headlines about the amount of time it's been between Skyrim and the Elder Scrolls 6's announcement versus now and the Elder Scrolls 6 announcement is like longer. Todd Howard's been very open about how much this has bothered him.
So keeping in line with Xbox's, what I would call a bit of a toxic habit of boasting about these games, a little bit of overconfidence, makes sense that Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be shoehorned in there as well. And the question does become, how much control does Todd Howard really have in these situations anymore? I'm going to be honest, I think the answer is probably next to none, but he's been very vocal how he wants that release window to be as short as possible, and they've seen a lot of success with that strategy. And realistically speaking, it's Elder Scrolls. If fans are excited about the game, it doesn't matter if it gets revealed this year or it gets the full reveal next year. Fans are going to maintain that same level of excitement no matter what. Yet for that same reasoning, because Elder Scrolls and Elder Scrolls 6 is a game that needs zero introduction, that it does make perfect sense to say, hey, we're going to use this as the opportunity to finally stop revealing games way too soon. We're going to wait on this one until it's going to be released, and we're confident, most importantly, in that release date. A lot of folks like to try to use the court documents as sort of the most damning piece of evidence that they can find, that it shuts down most of the other arguments because it has been right so far in a lot of regards. You look at something like Indiana Jones or Doom the Dark Ages, and it's just pushed within a 2-year delay, and that has been consistent so far. When you conveniently obfuscate the fact that it's also no longer correct and already out of date in several other ways. If you abide strictly by the documents, you look at it and say, okay, it was supposed to be the fiscal year of 24. Now it moves to the year of 2026. So they show off a little bit of a trailer to get fans excited, to show conceptually what it's going to look like, what it feels like, tease a few features that are going to be present in the Elder Scrolls 6, and then give that full meaty deep dive that we all really want to see during the Xbox 2026 showcase, which would allow them then to release it probably in the fall around the holiday season of 2026. So things line up really neatly there. I would like to remind folks that these issues do compound. If there was a delay experienced, it can exponentially push back future projects. So a project in 2022 might come out in 2024, but a project planned for 2024 might not be until 2027. And a lot of times, this doesn't even take into account that several of these projects have just been flat out canceled, which is a reminder that plans do change and dates can shift. You look at something like the Ghostwire Tokyo sequel, which is no longer going to happen because Tango isn't even at Bethesda anymore, a unplanned event, but something that you have to keep in mind. Or Dishonored 3, because we know that the licensed IP is now Marvel's Blade, that somehow Arcane Leon is supposed to be working on Blade as well as Dishonored 3 simultaneously, while previously it might have been a project that was being taken over by Arcane Austin, which of course has been shut down. And especially if project timelines are getting moved around, 2027 being the final release date, which lines up with the planned launch of the next generation Xbox console, it does make sense to me that that is what they're going to try to aim for, because what better way to sell your next console when you are in an environment of uncertainty, whether people want to buy an Xbox or not, because they're questioning, hey, these games are moving over to PlayStation anyway, why should I bother? But Xbox can strongly come out and say, here's our next console, buy Elder Scrolls 6, it's a launch title, it's available on Game Pass, and no, it's not coming to PlayStation. They might have some form of timed exclusivity where a couple years down the line you can play it on PlayStation 6, but they're not necessarily going to admit that out into the open. Manipulative? Sure. But a good strategy to get you to buy an Xbox? Also yes. There is an argument to be made that Microsoft, that Bethesda is going to want to capitalize on the excitement behind the Elder Scrolls name after the massively successful release of Oblivion Remastered. And hey, they show off a bit of a tease for the Elder Scrolls 6, and maybe it pushes some people to check out Oblivion Remastered that haven't already. The counter to that is to say it's the freaking Elder Scrolls, and no matter when they choose to reveal it, if it's this year, if it is 2026, or hell, if they want to push this game back to even 2027, there's going to be a lot of fans that are excited about this regardless. You're not going to suddenly kill all of the excitement for this game just because they're silent for a couple more years. Bethesda knows this. They did the exact same thing with Starfield. Many of us, myself included, were trying to speculate about the timeline of content that we'd get to feed more information to keep the excitement alive for Starfield. But they realized it was the next major Bethesda IP. They can talk about things when they're ready. And ultimately, while the reception of the game is something else entirely, there was a lot of anticipation and a lot of excitement and build-up going to the release of Starfield. That much is undeniable. And they know they'll get the same result with Elder Scrolls. Doesn't matter when they go ahead and start talking about it. They're going to get that excitement. They're going to get that fan base that have been waiting since Skyrim to get a new entry into the franchise. Game Pass is a really interesting beast. This is something that Luke Stevens talked about in his video in regards to a tweet from Juicehead, where he was confident in a reveal coming at this year's event. I responded and said, hey, I think that honestly, the fact that we might get a Fallout Season 2 trailer, that we have Oblivion Remastered that just released, that Outer Worlds 2 is going to be the main focus of the showcase as far as RPGs go, you're getting your fix there. Bethesda and Xbox can afford to wait, especially if the game isn't going to be releasing until the latter half of 2026, where they can just do the full reveal and again, return to that 6-month reveal to release window. And it's worth mentioning, when I say reveal, I don't mean the small tease that we got for Elder Scrolls 6 that just showed, hey, it exists. I mean really sitting down and getting a look at this game in the same style as these extended developer directs that take place, the extended Outer World showcase, that style of reveal. But he mentions that Game Pass is one of the biggest reasons why they're going to want to try to keep players hooked and incentivized about what's coming in the future. And as I mentioned, I think as far as releasing games really early and boasting about all the projects that they have in the pipeline makes a lot of sense when you factor in maintaining Game Pass memberships into the equation. Because again, Luke Stevens did talk about this, but you want to make sure that you just have players hooked for one more game. You think to yourself, oh, well, there is the Elder Scrolls 6 that's right on the horizon. There's a couple other games. I'm interested in Clockwork Revolution. That looks cool. Maybe I'll go off and check that out. I'll just keep my Game Pass subscription for a little bit longer. I'll hold on to it. That's totally fine. And then, sure enough, you're hooked on Game Pass for another 4, 5, 6, 7 months to a year as you try out all the other titles, justifying maintaining that membership because you know that Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be coming day one to Game Pass. And as a result, this is an opportunity to try to help bridge that gap because Xbox recognizes it is a franchise that a lot of people are very excited for. The other side of this argument is to say that there's plenty of other projects that Xbox has in the lineup for Game Pass that we don't necessarily need to have in Elder Scrolls 6. You do have Clockwork Revolution. You do have Forza Horizon that is probably going to come before the next Elder Scrolls game. You have the Outer Worlds 2. You have the backlog of games that have launched recently, whether it's Expedition 33, or folks maybe want to check out Blueprints if they haven't already, or they want to get into Gears of War E-Day. So many titles that are going to be available that adding Elder Scrolls to the list, especially if it's something that's much further down the road, doesn't really add any immediate value to hook gamers. It's not close enough. It's not visible on the horizon the way something like a Clockwork Revolution or an Outer Worlds or a Fable, which I forgot to mention, is, right? So not necessarily a need to show it off this soon, but because it is one of the bigger franchises under especially Bethesda, it's their biggest one, it does make sense to want to try to tease fans a little bit more that it is coming. It's entirely possible that Bethesda saw the marketing strategy for Starfield work, and they're changing the idea of how they want to release their other games as well. However, you could say, well, look at how well Oblivion Remastered did and go, right? That what you could do really short releases, or you could do a lot longer marketing cycles. Both work. But people will point to Starfield and that initial trailer, then the year wait, then the full gameplay showcase, and then the release of the game and say, this is probably what Bethesda will do going forward. But I think that fails to acknowledge the fact that Starfield was a brand new IP. Starfield, leading up to its launch, had zero, or leading up to the reveal of the game, had zero fans. There were no fans of Starfield because nobody knew what the game was. You could have been a fan of Bethesda Game Studios games, and you could have been a fan of sci-fi games, and you put those two together and you say, yeah, I'm a fan of Starfield, but you didn't know what the game was. Counter to Elder Scrolls, we know what an Elder Scrolls game generally feels like, what it generally looks like, how it plays. We know that there's going to be a Mages Guild or a Mages Guild equivalent, and we know there's going to be a Fighters Guild or an equivalent to that, a Thieves Guild, Dark Brotherhood. Maybe there's some new things thrown in there, like a settlement building system getting thrown in, or a city building is what people are speculating, or you get ships in the game, and that's some of the new, cool, exciting features. But we didn't know any of this leading up to Starfield, so Bethesda had to convince you and sell you on the premise of the game. They had to show you why there's 1,000 planets and how expansive this world could be, and that requires a lot more time and a lot more presentations in a way that a game like Elder Scrolls does not require. They had to build fans of Starfield. They already have fans for the Elder Scrolls. The ultimate decision maker is going to be when this release date is slated to be. If the game's coming out in 2026, there's more of a chance. If it's 2027, I see virtually no chance that it gets announced or shown off this year. But that's only something we can speculate about, right? The good news is we're going to find out either way. It's just a couple more days until the Xbox Game Showcase, and we'll finally have our answer. Again, I think it's pretty clear. I'm leaning towards no, I don't see it happening. Even if it is a 2026 release, in some regards, I think it makes the most sense for Bethesda to just wait, show it off, 6 months, full reveal to the release of the game. That's what they've always done well at. It's done good for them in the past, and I would like to see the same thing here. But let me know ultimately your thoughts down in the comments section below. I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say, and I look forward to seeing you at the showcase, which I will be streaming. I hope to see some new faces and some familiar ones as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of speculation, and as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long, everybody.